Welcome to the Stephen Mansfield audio podcast.
Well, it's that time of year when everyone talks about trends that are likely to shape next year, trends that shaped last year. So I'm going to jump in. Let's talk about the trends or the events in 2014 that I think are going to be very significant and continue to cast a long shadow. And then, yes, I'm actually going to risk some predictions about this next year. I think 2014 is going to be a very, very significant year for our world. Hope it will be positively for you. But let me first of all talk about the 5 events or forces that arose, trends that arose in 2013 that I think are going to be very, very significant for the future. These are in no particular order. First of all, number 1, I think that the advent of Bitcoin, the advent of online digital currency is going to be very, very significant. Already people are making money that way. Already it's becoming quite a force to contend with. Already a great deal of trade is taking place in this Bitcoin or something like it. Frankly, I think Bitcoin is going to go away and other forms of this digital currency are going to arise. But I think this is going to be an unbelievably significant force in our world. I'm not sure it's all going to be positive, but it's a-coming. Number 2, and again, these are in no particular order, is the persecution of Christians. We now know that Christians are by far the most persecuted, is by far the most persecuted religious body in the world. Christians are being murdered at an unbelievable rate, largely at the hands of Muslims, I'm sorry to say, and largely in the Middle East. But around the world, wherever we're talking about the persecution of a religion, it is almost always Christians that are being persecuted. Parliament recently conducted hearings on this topic. The U.S. Congress has done almost nothing, nor has the president addressed it. Very, very disappointed in that. But I think that the unchecked persecution of Christians around the world is a trend that will continue. And it's something that's going to shape our world, shape our generation. I believe this last year, the complete failure of the Affordable Health Care Act to launch well. Now, I'm not debating for this moment the act itself, what some people call Obamacare. I'm simply talking about the fact that our federal government could not launch a working website. And by the way, still doesn't have it right, when some college students from Stanford pretty much did it in a few weeks in their after hours. I think that is going to increase and entrench, embed this understanding that government does some things very well, there are other things it cannot do well. That really is sort of the libertarian/conservative case, that government ought, nobody's saying the government should not exist, it just should do the very few things it does well and leave other things alone. And I think even for those who were in favor of big government, or at least for a widespread role for government, I think that the failure of the Affordable Health Care Act website to function well, despite the funds and the force, the absolute power of the federal government to command whatever resources it needs to get the job done. I think it's not just disappointing. I think it's going to begin to shape our generation and the generations rising with an understanding that government simply has to stay within its boundaries. I think, unfortunately, we're also having a return to a racial divide, racial tensions in our modern world culture. The George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin situation exacerbated this, perhaps exposed the depth of it a little bit. It's certainly not that racism is a new thing in our world, but we believe that we got past a lot of that in the 60s and 70s, that now we live in a post-racial world. I think we found that was not the case this last year, and that is going to continue to be an issue. The African-American birth rate in America is twice that of whites. The Hispanic birth rate is 5 times that of whites. We are going to be a majority non-white country very, very soon, and I mean that both in terms of influence as well as numerically, demographically, and I think it's important for us to be prepared for the tensions that are going to come with that. And then I think number 5, the privacy issue is going to continue to be massive. It used to be that when people came up to me at my speeches or places that I traveled or just friends and said, your government is spying on you, that I would, laugh it off and think, well, here we go again, another extreme oddball. But the reality is we now know that our government was, at least it had the power to, had the authority to spy on us, that emails could be tapped, that phones could be tapped. And not just for, I'm going to sound a little bit perhaps racist here to some of you, but not just for somebody whose name was Abdullah, but maybe somebody whose name was Stephen Mansfield, maybe somebody whose name was George, meaning not according to a certain profiling even, just simply according to any suspicion that some judge might approve. So Bitcoin, the persecution of Christianity, the failure of the Affordable Health Care Act website to launch and the whole program to launch, racism as exposed through the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin situation, the killing of Trayvon Martin, and then, of course, privacy is a massive issue. Let me briefly list 7 trends I think will shape 2014. I think that you are going to see a dissolution of the influence of the 2 political parties in this country. I think people are fed up with those tensions. And I think you're going to see people from the left and the right. I'm not speaking of Democrat and conservative. I'm sorry, Republican. I'm speaking of the left and the right. You're going to see people of different political persuasions coming together on certain issues. For example, we know from the news that members of the Tea Party and members of the environmentalist movement have had tremendous victories in the state of Georgia, working together. So it's not a kumbaya moment. We'll still be passionate about those things we disagree about. But I think people are losing confidence in the 2 main political parties to get the job done. And I do think, of course, that we'll see the strengthening of third parties. I think that publishing, this is number 2, I think that publishing is going to go through an enhanced revolution. I think 2014, we're going to see a lot of this really gain speed. Part of it is that many publishers simply are incompetent. A lot of what you see happening in terms of changes in the publishing world, I hate to say it, is because some publishers, to put it humorously, don't deserve to live. I don't mean the individuals. I mean the companies. They just do an incredibly bad job. But aside from that, aside from just the free market forces that remove, that sort of deny incompetent people, unproductive companies from being able to thrive and keep them from having a place, I think you're going to see the results of trends like Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, buying the Washington Post. These trends, the move to digital, the move to online, is huge. I think it's going to really gain speed in 2014. And I think, frankly, this is a good thing. I think that the old school publishing of books, magazines, newspapers, as much as I love the written word, you'll still see books, you'll still see paper magazines, but most of this is online. And it's far more responsive to human beings, far more interactive. I think you're going to see some good things happen there. I'm hoping, by the way, eventually to help start an online Christian presence myself. I don't mean so much in terms of my websites, but something like a Drudge Report that's Christian. Or that's at least faith-oriented while being much broader than just a narrowly defined Christian publication. Why? Because there's not much out there now. Number 3, I think you're going to see 2 things at once regarding the internet. You're going to see a dramatic increase, a continued rise of the influence of the internet, of online buying, online reading, online shopping, every kind of online kind of activity. We saw, for example, in Christmas 2013 here just recently, that online buying flooded UPS and overwhelmed it so it couldn't make deliveries. Granted, it was a short shopping season. But nevertheless, I think you're going to see that trend increase. And I also think you're going to see a reaction against people being online, people talking on cell phones. You're going to see no cell phone zones like in restaurants. Already we're seeing airlines both allowing the devices and not allowing conversations at the same time on planes in a way that they haven't before. before. I think you're going to see two things at once: an increase of the power, but people are going to increasingly resent the intrusion of online devices into civil society and family life, personal relationships. I think that's very significant. I think in these next midterm elections, you're going to see an extension of what I said at number one, and that is you'll see a lot of independents winning office. There is a reaction against left Democrat and Republican. There is a disgust with the corruption. The book Our Town by Mark Leibovich in this past year, a brilliant expose of the games, the corruption, the deal-making that is counterproductive to democracy and the public interest. I think all that's coming to the fore and really shaping people's values. And as a result, I think you'll see perhaps more independents win in this next midterm election than you've seen before. I think also, and this is like almost obvious, like falling off a log, so simple to understand. But this next year, 2014, is the 50th anniversary of the Beatles landing in the United States, and so I think you're going to see a tremendous emphasis on the Beatles, and with that will come a sort of rehashing, re-examination of the 1960s. This will be very healthy, and it's an opportunity to get it right, because most of what passes for film treatment or writing about the 1960s gets it wrong. And I'm hoping that we have an honest, fascinating re-examination of the 1960s because of this anniversary of the Beatles' first landing in 1964. I think also you're going to see a continued, and I would say an even enhanced emphasis on religion. Most college professors are stunned. I'm talking about people who analyze these trends and have been for years. They're stunned that we're living in the kind of religious age in which we are. But it's only increasing. If you watch what movies are on the rise next year, if you look at the book trends, if you look at what's happening in terms of religion, religious discussion, the need to understand religion, discussions about religion, etc., the fact is that we are not becoming a secular society. We are becoming a polytheistic society, a society that emphasizes many gods, many religions. And if you're going to lead, if you're going to understand society, if you're just going to have intelligent dialogue in the society, you're going to have to understand these religions. We are moving towards perhaps a more religious society than we've ever had before. It's just a multitude of religions and not just Judeo-Christianity. And this last one is self-serving, but so be it. I think we may be on the front end of the kind of men's movement that appeals to young men of the millennial generation, that is palatable to women, that is healthy and whole, multi-ethnic, maybe even a little bit multi-religious, and I hope to feed it and perhaps even provide some leadership in it. Now, some of you are going to say, well, yeah, you got a book out on the subject. Yes, I do. And I'm also watching the trends. I'm watching the conversation. I'm watching the dialogue. Men, here it comes. Happy New Year.
Stephen Mansfield is a New York Times best-selling author and popular speaker who coaches and advises leaders worldwide. To learn more about Stephen, log on to stephenmansfield.tv. The Stephen Mansfield podcast is produced by Isaac Darnell, who also wrote and performed the Rockin' Podcast theme song. This is a Chartwell Literary Group production. Chartwell is ingeniously led by Beverly Darnell Mansfield. As a result, all rights are reserved. For more information, contact us through stephenmansfield.tv.